Good morning, honorable members. Today is a blessed day indeed. I made it through to another journey in my life. And I want to invite, by way of my voice, each and every one of you to lunch with me today. And we'll be using the downstairs quarters where I would have gotten permission from both sides to use the quarters. So today is a special day for all of us, and I spared no cost. So prepare yourselves, your mind, your body, and your palates. So now, before we left, we were debating the appropriation revenue account, and I believe that we are ready to presume. And on the floor right now will be the honorable member for Fox Hill.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker, and let me be amongst those to give voice to what you've heard already. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much.
And may you enjoy your 40th birthday.
Thank you very much. Only 40.
Yes, it looks good on you. So today is the 2nd of June. And on the 1st and 2nd of June 1942, there were momentous political events in our country. That is why on the 1st of June 1956, the late Sir Randall Fox gathered some 2,000 workers together for what was then the first Labor Day march, I understand, or I'm advised, in the Bahamas. Later, Labor Day became a public holiday. The first Friday in June is celebrated as that holiday, but it harks back to the days of the what became known as the Burma Road riots, which Doris Johnson in her book The Quiet Revolution marks as the beginning of the modern political era. There was an awakening of the populace of the Bahamas that before that time had individual heroes like Milo Butler. But this was the first kind of mass movement that took place. Those of you who want to read the history of what happened on the 1st and 2nd of June, there are two documents in the 1943 volumes of the House, which can be found downstairs. One is the Select Committee report of the House, which was headed by Stafford Sands, and the other was a commission of inquiry, which looked into the causes of the riots, and what they said was the immediate cause was the fight for wages, the differential in wages at the building of the Windsor Field, which is now the Lyndon Pinley International Airport, and Bahamian workers being discriminated against in terms of their pay. So that was settled after the riots, but the underlying causes was the social disequilibrium in the country, which eventually led to majority rule on the 10th of January 1967. So on that day, 5 black men were killed. Harold McIntosh, David Smith, Roy Johnson, Donald Johnson, and James Alexander. There were 30 white men injured, 114 arrested, and many, many people went to jail as a result of it. The British Army was on the streets for 2 days. At the time, the governor of the country was the Duke of Windsor, who was himself in exile from the UK because he was suspected to be a Nazi sympathizer, and Churchill had sent him out here to get out of harm's way. So that is what happened over these 2 days. So let's remember those days because they laid the foundation to make it possible for us to be here today, for those who lost their lives, those who were injured, and of course those who joined the fight. Lyndon Pinley at the time was 13 or 12 years old, born in 1930, so he was 12 years old. He was going to Western Junior School, he said. They heard about the riot because there was a Coca-Cola truck outside here. Someone took a bottle off the truck, smashed a window, and the riot started. It was instructive, he said, so that when they were planning the Black Tuesday events in 1965, they wanted to be sure that no riot would ensue, and therefore led the people after the demonstration in the House to the Southern Recreation Ground where they had a rally and dispersed. So we remember on this Labor Day, Sir Randall Fox and all those men and women who struggled from 1942 before 1942 to majority rule in 1967 for their life of service. And happy Labor Day to all workers in the country. This is, Madam Speaker, my 30th consecutive year in the Parliament. 15 years in the Senate and 15 years in the House. So I started out on the 10th of May, 1992, as a senator, and then was reappointed in 97, elected in 2002, as you know, lost the election in 2017, and now back here in 2021. And I'm deeply grateful. And I should also say that I want to remind people on this occasion what a rare opportunity it is to get in this place. It's 500,000 of us almost, and we are like 0.0016% of the people who actually get to serve here. So while you're here, I keep saying, use the opportunity, use your voice, use the opportunity, never forget the reason why you are here, which is to do good for the Bahamian public. I have also been doing these budget debates because I started out, my first career, of course, was as a journalist, and so I was made the director of public affairs of the Broadcasting Corporation on the 1st of August, 1977, and later that year a year later became the director of news and public affairs of the Broadcasting Corporation. Thus began the storied history between my colleague here on the left and myself. He tells me he's going to write a book. So this will be covering being around for these debates makes 45 years this year. They used to be in December, and I remember as a reporter sitting in this place until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, waiting for the heads to be finished, trying to get out just before Christmas Eve, until Hubert Ingraham, when he became Prime Minister, changed the financial year from the 1st of January to the 1st of July as it is now. I've tried to, during the course of my career, to try and get an objectified sense of what I am and who I am as a politician. And I've developed a reputation of being somewhat of a lightning rod. And there are uses for that, but the basic philosophy I have now is that we are in a very good place where, just judging from the anecdotal information coming to me, people are quite pleased with the performance of the government thus far and wish us well. And I can tell you that, money isn't, the Americans say money is the mother's milk of politics. But I can tell you that coming up hard behind it has got to be goodwill. If you lose goodwill, you're in big trouble. Doesn't matter what you say, people don't listen to you, don't have anything to say to you, and you can never win whatever argument you get in. So we have to guard ourselves during this time on what the Americans call unforced errors, and do nothing to distract ourselves from the main mission of the government. We should avoid any fights. The union leaders, I was talking to them over the last few days, and I say, there's not a time for disputes because you have government that can settle anything that you think needs to be settled. So there's no need to row me in public. You just have to talk to me. And if you think it's taking too long, and we all know what the capacity issues, I'd come to those in the public administration are, but you just have to talk to us and we'll get it resolved. So I hope that, certainly that's the way I would be operating going forward. And I have a friend, his name is Al Delet. He used to always say that one of the things that we ran afoul of as a government was death by 1,000 cuts. So all during the term, we keep saying, oh, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter. But it then all adds up at the end where there's avalanche and you're trying to recover just before a campaign. So if we can avoid unforced errors, let's do that. if we can just find a way to resolve problems, let's do that. But like Cecil Wallace Whitfield said, one day he showed up here after he'd gotten his cancer treatment, and he said, you know, my philosophy going forward is this. I will not attack anybody, but if you attack me, I will get you back. So that's the way it works. There was a couple of weeks ago, if I read correctly, 12.37 inches of rainfall fell in the Bahamas or in New Providence in one day. That is, I'm told, 2 months of rainfall in 24 hours. It was a Friday, I believe, 12.37 inches of rainfall. And there was flooding across the island. And of course, people started saying we need to dig wells, we need to put up barriers, we need to give out sandbags. And I say this because the Prime Minister, in his intervention yesterday, spoke extensively about his fight on the climate change issue. And we keep talking about climate change as if it's coming or it's a prospective thing. But I want to point out that what you see is what you get. It is actually before you. And so when we start talking about the fight for mitigation and adaptation and the monies that are needed, Mia Mottley, for example, who's the Prime Minister of Barbados, and our own Prime Minister has adopted this, was able to say that if you go and look back at the GDP, at the debt of countries in the Caribbean, fully 50% of the debt in the last 5 years, I believe, is attributed to climate change, these weather issues, and the pandemic. So we are in real trouble right now. And the problem we have is, as a small country, we are unable to use military might to force a solution. The only argument we really have is the moral argument. And it's this. The air has been used by the developed countries for centuries, for free. The whole Industrial Revolution was used for free. There was no cost to it. And they were able to develop their economies, but by pumping carbon into the air. And now, when it becomes a huge problem, they're walking away from their responsibility to help those of us who are suffering as a result of it, to help solve the problem. They don't seem to accept it. Yes, they say the words, but they don't actually follow through with the actions. And so a prime minister in this country has no choice but to keep going around the world beating the drum to make sure that this message gets across, that we are in an existential position. And today there's going to be more rainfall here, and you will see the floods again. And I know people say dig wells, but digging wells, that costs a lot of money. Building seawalls costs a lot of money. And we have to find the money from somewhere. And you can't be borrowing it at 9 and 10%. It's just too much. And while we're trying to get ourselves up on our feet, another one comes this year. And then what? So we are in this invidious position where these countries must be made to know that they have to pay. And they have to pay not later, but now. They have to pay now. I would like also to thank the ambassador to CARICOM, who has presented her credentials a couple of weeks ago, who is also on the committee which was responsible for organizing the state-recognized funeral service for the late Sir Sidney Poitier. By this time, all members of Parliament should have received, and if they haven't, it should be coming quickly, 5 of these invitations for the cultural show and for the funeral service. The cultural show will be at 7 p.m. At Atlantis on the evening of the 18th, and the church service will be at the Roman Catholic Cathedral, St. Francis, at 2 p.m. on Sunday, the 19th. Members of Parliament will be asked to provide at least five 5 are being sent to each member of parliament. This is a state-recognized service, and medals and decorations will be expected. You can also wear a guayabera, or I think it's called, what is it? National dress, guayabera, military dress, and medals and decorations. So I just want you to be on alert for that, because I'm sure some of your constituents would want to attend the function. But I thank the Member of Parliament for Seabreeze for her work in that regard. The government has also offered to the Newry family the possibility of a state-recognized funeral for the late Eugene Newry. Dr. Newry passed away during the week, was a founding member of the NCPA, is a former diplomat of the country, having served as a diplomat in Washington, D.C., and in New York at the United Nations and at the Organization of American States, and also in the Republic of Haiti. Dr. Newry is survived by his wife, Francoise, and his children. So you can stand by for that. One of the stories from the NCPA was that this was an organization was patterned after the National Committee for Positive Action in Ghana, which was the organization that propelled Nkrumah to office in 1957 when Ghana got its independence. And so the Young Turks in the Progressive Liberal Party in the late 50s and early 60s decided that the pace of change was too slow under those who then led the party, and formed a similar organization called NCPA, which led to the ascendancy of Mr. Pinling, as he then was, to the leadership of the party. And in 1962, when Jack Kennedy came to the Bahamas to meet with John Diefenbaker at Life and Key, who's the Prime Minister of Canada, and Harold Macmillan, the Prime Minister of the UK, there was a demonstration by the NCPA outside the gates of Life and Key, and Gene says that Mr. Kennedy stopped his limousines and sent a message over to ask why were they demonstrating, and later invited a group of them to lunch the next day. And I always found that a fascinating story. We think that it's appropriate, given his support and his work for where we are as well, for this state-recognized service. We are moving, says the Prime Minister in his statement yesterday and before, toward a minimum wage of $250 a week. This is going to be a sea change for our country. They've been trying to restrain me from saying I think it ought to be higher, but not being very successful, but it should. Because, believe me, when people at the minimum wage level get funding, the economy thrives, because they spend and support the economy. And so we believe that this is the right thing to do, and I want to applaud the government for it. There's also, at the moment, a fact-finding mission being led by the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister to the Middle East. And with him is the Minister for Economic Affairs. And I'll tell you about the experience of interfacing with the Middle East, as you will find that there is a philosophy which they have, and you also see this to some extent in the United States. It always fascinates me that no matter when you go to these countries or you go to the United States, they're always building something. Have you ever seen the Miami International Airport, for example, when they're not constructing something, or when the road is not being built or changed? And the same thing in the Middle East. They're always building something. And I hope that this is something that we can adopt, because building and expanding causes growth, it increases wealth, and we should keep moving forward, as they say, forward ever and backward never. Yes, so in terms of my philosophy with this budget, my view is that the budget is supposed to support growth and development. And it is interesting how people are fascinated by the budget exercise. And so what you can see going forward over the next year is growth and development. In the case of the Foreign Ministry, we hope that we'll have a new building in the cards. Hope with the Parliament that there's a new building in the cards. So these are just some examples of what could happen and what should happen, in my view. The challenge always is the public administration. And I believe I said in this House before, Michael Manley, when he lost his election in 1980 to Siago, was saying that one of the reasons that the government fell, he believed, his administration fell in 1980, was that the public administration could not keep up with the pace of change of the political administration and political directorate. Right. So we come into office, you make these decisions, and then you find out 6-8 weeks later, nothing happens. And you think something is done, it's not done. I was talking to an investor in one of the islands in the Abacos, and he was saying that the bureaucracy is killing this country. That everything is fine. You meet the politicians, you meet the people, everybody gives you good service, but the execution is the problem. And so we had warned our predecessors about this. We see the results in the school out in Holmes Rock and the government administration building, which is now, we left it being built. I think it was stopped, reviewed, and I don't know what, was it canceled? It wasn't quite canceled, but we are back again 4.5 years later, and it's still not finished. And I'm told from the Minister of Grand Bahama that it's just about finished now. The administration building and the school must be just about finished as well, or in its final stages. But the point here is that we have to understand the capacity issues which we face. And the reason I raise this is because there's so much impatience in the public with us saying, it's been 9 months. How come this isn't done? It's been 9 months. Where's my money? And we have the same questions to ask as well. And so the country expects us over the next year or so to try and fix this as an issue. That you can't rely on, it's the public administration. We have to fix it as an issue. And it comes with things, little things like, I always get into fights with people about starting things on time. I can't understand, for the life of me, I'd be sitting at some meeting in this country. It's 7 o'clock. The meeting's supposed to start at 7 o'clock. But everybody's like, it's supposed to start 7:05 or 7:10 or something, right? And I'm asking them, why can't you start the meeting? Oh, we can start in a minute. Don't worry, we can get started, right? I said, no, get the meeting started. Just start the meeting. And so that seems to be like a cultural thing that we have, that, stall, delay, defer, anything not to get it done. Which is a good device for lawyers, of course. I used it myself.
Time is money.
Yes, right. Yeah, stall, delay, defer. But the point I'm making is that we have to, as a country, make a commitment to this question of doing things on a timely basis with dispatch, and making sure, because it's the only way. We've got now just over 4 years left if we go to the full term. And it's unbelievable. First of all, it's unbelievable to me that I was on a public platform after the election saying we got 60 months to go. And here it is, we now in government. And it's just, the time just goes by blindingly fast. And before you know it, we're in an election campaign again. So I want to read the statement that the Progressive Liberal Party issued on the 25th of May. It said, the Progressive Liberal Party congratulates Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Philip E. Davis, on his budget statement delivered in Parliament today. It sets the pathway for the forward, progressive, and resilient growth of our country. We are particularly pleased about the commitment to the hardworking public servants in the country. In addition, the restatement of the increase in the minimum wage provides meaningful help for working people. The realignments in tax policies are welcome. Homeowners in particular should benefit from these adjustments. The commitments on climate change demonstrate that we have in Mr. Davis's administration our eyes firmly set on an energy secure and sustainable future. The commitments to our young people are welcome. It is refreshing to hear that sports will again get the support it deserves and that the capital development projects connected therewith will be advanced. Thank you also for the commitments to education, to small business development, to agriculture, and to the development and upgrade of our national infrastructure, at the same time managing our fiscal affairs prudently. It is a rare opportunity that a leader gets to be a leader, and even more rare to get the opportunity as a national leader to press the reset button and to guide with a steady hand the country's national recovery. Our Prime Minister has that opportunity, and clearly he has knocked the ball out of the park. And so I want to commend that statement to colleagues, because particularly this bit about having the rare opportunity to fix problems that you, growing up in the belly of the beast, so to speak, you saw them, you said, one day I'm going to get there and I'm going to try and fix these issues, and he now has this opportunity. And our job as a supporting cast is to make sure that he can carry out that job without distraction. So in the foreign affairs budget, they've given me $30.1 million or so this year, and that's gone up to $36.2 million for the next fiscal year. And I want to therefore refer, that looks like about $5 million more, but you know, as my friends will tell you, whatever you give me, I can spend it. And you know, my view is you give me what you can provide for me, and all I want is when it's time to pay, you know, let's pay. But 36 million or so and change. So here's what we promised in the blueprint of foreign affairs in our platform for the last election. We committed to advancing Bahamian interest abroad to create a greater Bahamian footprint abroad, ensure all embassies have a trade and investment attaché to assist in attracting investments to the Bahamas and expanding trade, participate actively at the United Nations with a view to secure non-permanent seats on influential councils, and you know that we are running for a seat at the Security Council for the year 31-32. Establish the Foreign Service Institute with the University of the Bahamas for training and developing of all foreign representatives abroad. We've done that. We're naming the institute after the late officer who died in Italy, Al Ray Ramsey, so it's going to be called, when it's formally convened, the Al Ray Ramsey Institute for Foreign Affairs. Fully implement foreign service orders, actively engage and leverage the Bahamian diaspora to contribute to national development, implement international secondment programs for international companies who hold Bahamas work permits and others, increase embassies, consulates, and airlift with strategic allies in Central and South America, Africa, and the Middle East, commit to a dedicated building for the permanent place of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and strengthen international cooperation on climate change and mitigation. As the member for Pine Ridge said to me, all the boxes have been ticked. So that's it. I can move on, right? Yeah, so we've done that. Yeah. So in terms of the expansion, though, we have increased the hires, as you will note from the budget book. But there is a plan to open an office in Toronto for Bahamians there. Los Angeles, these are consulates, looking at Dubai, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Panama. We spoke about increasing our footprint. The Prime Minister spoke about this yesterday, and he will be attending the Summit of Americas shortly in Los Angeles, and we'll get an opportunity to interface with other countries across the hemisphere. Now, you will note in the run-up to the discussions on this that there's been a concern that 3 countries have not been invited to the summit. They are Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. And we have spoken up to the Americans. There are some countries that have decided, because those countries are not being invited, that they will not attend. Most notably, Mexico. The president of Mexico has said he will not go. He'll send his foreign minister instead. And for other reasons, Bolivia and Brazil have also said the same thing. So we're not sure to what extent this is going to be successful. But from the point of view of the Bahamas, our point is the Prime Minister wants to make that point to the Americans directly, that you must have a summit of all countries of the hemisphere and not some countries of the hemisphere. And the fact that you disagree with the internal governance of a particular country is not a sufficient reason to deny someone the seat at the table. So that is a point which our Prime Minister will make. Later this year, he will also attend his first meeting as the head of government of the Bahamas at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, which takes place in Paramaribo in Suriname. And this will be, again, an opportunity to be a part of the sub-regional group. Now, I say sub-regional because you have the world body, the United Nations, you have the hemispheric body, which is the Organization of American States, and then you have the regional group, which is CARICOM. And people say, why are we part of these organizations? And it is because in the efficiency of relations in the international arena, it is simpler and easier for people to belong to groups and organizations. And so we speak to one another in groups and organizations and try to come to functional cooperation with various bodies as we face the world. And our sub-regional group is CARICOM. That meeting will take place in early July. And then following, but just before that, he will travel to Rwanda. Kigali is the capital of Rwanda for his first meeting of the heads of government of the Commonwealth. Now, the Commonwealth, you know, is the rump, so to speak, of what was once called the British Empire. And of course, there are some who still believe it's the British Empire. I think they may find out otherwise when this meeting takes place. But I think that has died. But at that meeting will be 54 countries, including all of the countries of CARICOM, with the exception of Suriname, that's not a member of the Commonwealth. And the interesting thing is, I found out that there are 2 Bahamians who actually work in Kigali. They're air traffic controllers. And so people say, why are we going to these places? But, you know, Bahamians are everywhere, and their interests have to be protected. So I just want to make that as in parenthesis or a little side note. But at the meeting, it is expected that there will be a vote or an attempt to reach consensus on the support for Patricia Scotland, Baroness Patricia Scotland, to resume her term as the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. And the Bahamas supports her re-election. We have consistently supported her, both the last administration and this administration. We support her re-election. And there's a lot of stuff floating in the air, but as far as we are concerned, this is largely propaganda. Issues which cannot be identified, and any issue which has been identified, we've been able to look into those issues and are satisfied that those issues do not amount to anything of importance. She has been a friend for small island developing states. She's been a voice on the issue of climate change, and we think that that voice needs to continue, and therefore she has our support. So one of the reasons we also think it is important to be part of the Commonwealth is, again, the efficiency of relations. We have been asked by the Cabinet to conclude diplomatic relations with Tuvalu, which is a member of the Commonwealth, with Gabon, which is a country in West Africa. Those are being executed now. I think also Saudi Arabia. We are seeking to expand relations with them. As you say, the Deputy Prime Minister is headed there in a short while. So, but when you have this aggregation of 53 countries getting together, it's a rare opportunity. We can't afford to have embassies in 192 countries. We can't do it. We have expanded the range of thematic ambassadors and non-resident ambassadors, but they operate from home. The point is, at some point, you have to have an interface, and it is cheaper and more efficient to be a part of these sub-regional groups or these groups across the world where you, every once in a while, you get together and you're able to have relationships with people that you would not normally get to see or meet. So that is what's happening there with the visit to Kigali. And then later in the year, there is the COP27, which will take place in Egypt. And again, it's beating the drum on climate change, which I say is here with us before our very eyes. If I may turn for a bit to our position on Venezuela, we have reversed the position of our predecessors with regard to the recognition of the Venezuelan government. And this is one of the issues that arose with the Summit of the Americas. You also know that in the case of Ukraine, that we have lined ourselves up on the side of the Western countries with regard to this and have issued statements and supported resolutions which decry the invasion of Ukraine and the actions of the Russian state toward Ukraine. We expect to complete or begin work which was begun by our predecessors, our immediate predecessors, with regard to the properties owned in Washington, D.C. and in London. Buildings need substantial maintenance. The building in D.C. has what is about $6 million that's going to be required to fix the building. It has been abandoned now for 2 years. The estimates were done, but the building, which is really valuable real estate sitting on Massachusetts Avenue, which is Embassy Row in the U.S., has just been sitting there empty for 2 years. And I'm sure, given the shortages that have taken place in the supply chain, which has bumped up all the costs, I mean, I shudder to think what the costs are actually going to be. But the building cannot just be a wasted asset. It has to be repaired. And similarly, the building in London needs substantial work. The buildings in London need substantial work. And we look forward to getting started on that, as well as the building which is called Bahamas House in New York, in Harlem. It was bought, I believe, in 1937 by Bahamians who lived in New York. The Bahamas American Association, I think, was founded in the early 20th century because some men who had moved to New York from Andros felt that the British Council was not looking after their affairs, so they formed this association and later were able to buy this building, which is worth, I think, about $2 million, but also is a wasted asset. And I'm unfortunately advised that there's a tax issue again with the building, which I've asked our Consul General to see if he can get on top of that issue, because we need to work on that building as well. I want to thank all the diplomats who work for us. They do a yeoman's work. And to get back to one of the points which I said about the Foreign Service orders, is that there is, I think it isn't overstating it too much to say a high degree of disgruntlement amongst the staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs about the fact that so many of their careers have actually been on hold. Some people have been working 8 years, 12 years, no promotions. Some of them are still administrative cadets or administrative cadet trainees and been sitting in this rank for 8 years. We put in place a set of orders called the Foreign Service Orders to wean the Foreign Service off from the general public service. But for 4.5 years, nothing happened with these orders. And so these people's careers have been on hold. Our predecessors decided to use contract work, which is fine because you're able to jump over the public service rules with regard to pay, but it doesn't actually set up a career path for people. So we've got a task force now headed by Ambassador Chet Nemore, working with some other officials in the ministry to try and get on top of that issue so people's career paths can now resume and move forward. And I hope that this will do something to ease some of the tension on this point. There is a kind of fault line building up between those who have been there historically and those who've come in the last year and getting posted. And so there are all of those issues. So hopefully we'll get that resolved. And I think that the Director General, who's come back, Rhoda Jackson, will be working with a permanent secretary. I want to thank Donella Bodie, who came in to help us in a real fix that we were in trying to get on top of some of these personnel issues. And, I wish all of them well, and their support is unequivocal from the government of the Bahamas for the work they do. If I might turn now to the question of Fox Hill. When I was in opposition and served in that other place, one of the points that I made was the development of the Fox Hill Community Center. This was, in my view, by any measure, an extraordinary gift of a government to a community. The history of the building is that somewhere around 1989, George Mackey, who was my predecessor in Fox Hill, announced that he was going to build a community center. Some 27 years later, that community center was completed. And I give that timeline because those of us who are impatient for things to get done sometimes understand how difficult it is to actually get things done. And one of the things I often say is sometimes you find out that the people who were campaigning on your side don't actually believe the same things you believe when they actually get to office. So you'll find that sometimes. And so there's a struggle, there's a dynamic struggle which takes place to get things done. And you have to push and push and push and never take no for an answer. So George Mackey announced in 1989 this community center. It's commissioned in 2017. And what he did was he had the land vested in a nonprofit called the Fox Hill Community Center. And that nonprofit owns the building. The nonprofit has on its board all of the pastors of Fox Hill, the representatives of the Junkanoo Group, and of the Fox Hill Festival Committee. And they own the facility. So we got some money from the IDB through the Citizens Justice Initiative program. And then Prime Minister Christie came to Fox Hill in 2016, which he always did, for Fox Hill Day. And he announced that the government would commit all of the funds to complete the project, which he did. And the Bahamas Striping Group was hired in a PPP to finish the building. And it is and it was finished in 2017, including a swimming pool. And the swimming pool is 25 meters, 4 lanes, so it is can be a practice pool for people who are interested in training for the Olympics. The building has an auditorium, and the auditorium was put in place mainly because the Sandlands Primary School does not have an auditorium for the children, and they'll be using it in a couple of weeks for graduation. I understand the GLAT exams took place a couple of days ago there, so it's now being utilized for the purposes which were envisaged. It was my deep regret that during the interregnum, this 4.5 years, the facility went backwards. And I did my best to show that this facility, which had been given to the people of Fox Hill, was simply abandoned. The pool went green. I got, during my time out, I got 20 computers donated by a nonprofit in the United States, and the computers sat there until I went there 6 weeks ago and put the programs on the computers. So the computers now, but they did nothing for 4.5 years. So you have this huge building, this huge facility that was not used for the purposes for which it was constructed. And it just seemed an enormous waste of capital, and I just couldn't figure out why, if you were handed a gift, it's not possible to simply carry on the work. In any event, we have passed that now. The pool is blue again, and the children were able to go swimming again. And we hope all during the summertime there'll be programs. And the one thing that was really confounding was the building was meant to be run totally on solar. So there's solar panels that have been on the roof since 2017, but unused. So of course, I, with my fast self, would go by and ask, well, why isn't solar being used? So they said, well, the Ministry of Works requires a ladder to get up to the roof to inspect the solar panels to be sure that no, I'm not kidding, that they require a ladder so that they can inspect the connection between the solar panel and the power supply coming from the generators and from the grid. So I said, well, that seems easy enough. Why don't you just use a bucket truck to do it? Just go up on the roof and inspect it. They said, no. It requires a permanent ladder to be put up. Now, so what they actually require is, like, you have an emergency ladder on those buildings. So there has to be a ladder which is put up on the side of the building. So anytime the Ministry of Works wants to inspect it, they can climb up the ladder and go and inspect it. But it took, again, 4.5 years to construct a ladder. Yeah, I mean, it's just, Madam Speaker, you just cannot make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up, you know.
Not today.
Not today, Minister.
Yeah.
Not today.
Not in the new day. Not in the new day, eh? Not in the new day.
Well,
Not in the new day.
well, the ladder is there now.
Yeah.
The ladder is there
Not
now.
in the new day.
Yeah. But we had to do some additional work because, you know, little children being what they were able to, even though they have razor wire fence and all the rest, the little ones were able to breach the fence and jump into the swimming pool. So we have to do something to make sure that is protected. So, because you don't want to have any accidents take place. But the fact is, this is a gift to the people of Fox Hill. And what I said during the whole time I was in opposition is, do not let these folk bamboozle you into giving up ownership of this asset and saying, give it back to the government, because that would be a sure way for the whole thing to fall apart. A sure way for the whole thing to fall apart. I say, maintain at all costs your independence, because you know, again, as I was saying with the Prime Minister here, you get this rare opportunity to be the leader of a country. You get this rare opportunity to get this gift. Do not squander it. Do not give it away. Protect it and guard it as much as you can. And therefore, I am really grateful to the leaders of the Fox Hill community for protecting that asset. And I want to pay tribute to them for staying the course. And the other thing which I promised was the question of title to land in Fox Hill. So you have a problem which exists, and this probably also exists in St. Anne's, where people have been on land for generations and have no title to property. So there's property disputes all the time. Who owns what? So back again in 1990, George Mackey, of blessed memory, acquired the Sugarman Estate, which is a tract of land in between Eastwood and Fox Hill. And he acquired that land because people from Fox Hill, even though it was owned by Sugarman, remember?
Yeah, Sugarman.
Yeah, Sugarman, right, Sugarman. People had been living on the land and were in actual occupation of the land but had no title to the land. So he acquired the land. It was vested in the Minister of Housing. And I was able to get the then Minister of Housing, Neville Wisdom, to agree that we would have a survey done of the properties, and all people who were in actual occupation of the land would get a surveyor would do it, and they would since the title was vested in the Minister of Housing, the Minister of Housing would then convey the land to those people who were in actual occupation. So we lost office in 2007, and the new administration came in, and I think Ken Russell was the Minister of Housing, and we worked with him and agreed to continue what Minister Wisdom had started. And just before the general election, we were able to conclude, and we were able to vest the properties in the people who were in actual occupation. So that was good. So I figured that in campaigning during this last campaign, that this is a formula to resolving all of these problems, because the Quieting of Titles Act is just so expensive to do. Difficult, it takes a long time. So thanks to the government again and this Prime Minister, the decision's made, the surveyors have been out for people who've identified themselves as having these issues. And the idea is to do a similar exercise for the properties to vest in the government and then to reconvey them to the people who are in actual occupation of the land. And I thank the administration for this. This is great and should help resolve some of the problems. And this is something which is important to repeat. I was, in 1992, I was saying that's how I started out here, I was appointed as one of these senators in the middle, so-called independent senators. Of course, there's no such thing, but because the Prime Minister at the time, Hubert Ingraham, did the appointment. And but I remember this. So the House of Assembly is opening, the state opening of Parliament. And this is 92. So all the F&M members of Parliament and senators are over in the Cabinet office. And all the PLP members and senators are downstairs in the opposition committee room. And there's me by my lonesome trying to make chat with the policeman outside. And I said to myself, I will never find myself in this position again where I'm standing on my own. That it always pays to be part of a group. And so, you know, and that is a. No, I wasn't invited. I wasn't invited. I was. Yeah. As things moved toward 1997, I remember going to Arthur Hanna's house. I think it was for a reception of some kind. And I met Perry Christie, as he then was, leader of the opposition. And we were sitting in Mr. Hanna's drawing room. And somehow I ended up with Mrs. Bernadette Christie and myself in the room. And she started saying to me, when are you going to rejoin the PLP? When are you coming back to the PLP? You know, and I'm sort of hemming and hawing, and she says, I want you to rejoin the PLP. She says, I want you to become a minister, and when you become a minister, I can come to you and ask you for things, and you could do it. That made a lot of sense to me. So here I am. And so I just want to commend that story to you because, again, the idea is that we're here to do things for people. And I try, as impatient as they get, you know, these days because they have access to you through these phones. If you don't answer within 2 seconds, why are you treating me this way? You're ignoring me. So there's that. But I always think that the thing to do is to always find a way to say yes rather than no. Always try and find a way to say yes rather than no. And of course, you, as a politician, have to develop the art of deflecting because no is not a pleasant thing to say to people. And people, no matter how frank they tell you they want you to be, don't, you know, homie, don't play that. You just better find a way to say, I'll get to it later. You know, let me try my best to assist. Oh, you got it. See, he's a quick learner. But I look into it, you know. I can see what I can do. Yeah, any more? I may have missed some. But the point is to do your best to see if you can get it done. And so that is one of the reasons why earlier in the year we agreed with the other side to form this committee for the management of the Parliament and to do our best to improve the benefits and allowances and privileges of members of Parliament to support the work that you do. No member of Parliament, in my view, or we should have passed the era in this country where a member of Parliament becomes impecunious because he chose to serve his country. That should not happen. Your work should be supported in its entirety so long as you are in the position, should be supported by the government of the Bahamas. And
you shouldn't be broke, impecunious.
Yes, right.
Tell what it means.
The Prime Minister's reminded me that impecunious means you shouldn't be broke, you shouldn't go broke. And of course, there's so many stories of that. I had a first cousin, my mother's first cousin, who, in his anxiety to help people, was busy backing notes at the bank. And I remember when I first got appointed to the Senate, you know, Harold Longley, God bless him, he's the manager of the Royal Bank of Canada, right here, the main branch. And he said to me, look, people who come to you and say they want you to back a note, you tell them, come see me at the Royal Bank, and I'll deal with that. But do not do that. It's a sure path to ruin, because people may have the best of intentions, but you end up with the bank calling you and the loan is in default. So you try your best to help people And we are trying to work to a place where you get the full support of the government for the work which you do as a member of parliament. So that, I hope, includes, well, I think the opposition has the list of all the things which we think, having gleaned from them, all the things which we think ought to be a part of it. But it also includes an amendment to the law, which gives the parliament its independence and which will also put us in a new building with proper facilities. And hope that we just don't dissolve into a row over this. This is really important to do. And as I said to the Prime Minister after Cabinet one day, you know, once you got the opportunity to do these things, you better do them before, you know, goodwill evaporates and everybody turns sour toward what you're doing. So that's an important thing which is coming, and I will look to the House's support for it. This morning, I got a number of calls, one of which from the Reverend Canon Sebastian Campbell, to ask us about the announcement on Queen's Honors. And some people were saying that they had made nominations for national honors and were shocked to see that their nominees had not been chosen. So I had to say to them that the honors that were announced over the last days are not the national honors. The national honors are conferred as a result of an act of the Parliament of the Bahamas by the Governor General, who is the Chancellor of the Orders. And those honors will be announced on the 10th of January and will be conferred, sorry, the 10th of July, and the honors will be conferred on the second Monday in October, which is National Heroes Day. It is important for us to, I was really heartened by the number of nominations that were advanced by the Bahamian public. It's clear that the honors are now gaining currency, and we should come to a point where the British honors fall away. It just seems to me very strange to be talking about the Order of the British Empire for an empire that no longer exists. So we have to get to that. But we, you know, Mr. Ingram, I think he was Prime Minister, there I was talking about these Bahamian honors and how we must abolish the British honors. And he gave my mother a Queen's Certificate and Badge of Honor. So he saw me someplace, he said, well, what you can say now? So, you know, that's what you say in chess, you say check. Because my mother was very proud of it. She had it up on the wall. So, nope. So, that was her honor. But we have to get to a point where it's the Bahamian honors alone. And we're working toward that. So I thank you, Reverend Sebastian Campbell. I did tell him that, you know, the work of revolution is never done. So, you know, I'm in a cabinet. I'm bound by certain rules and conventions and support the decisions of the cabinet. But he, since he is in civil society, can go out and preach the gospel, the good news, far and wide. Which I'm sure he's quite able to do. So I commend the budget to the House. I support its provisions. I support the work of the government. I'm pleased to be back in this position. I'm like Mark Twain, who said, reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. And I look forward to election 2026 and putting my name in the hat again. And yes, hopefully in a new parliament. And I wish all of you the best. And as they say at the end of these things with the, the state opening of parliament, which I hope we have one later this year in October. May Almighty God, I pray Almighty God rests upon your councils.
Thank you, Honorable Member Asmini. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Nassau Village.